Those are berries.
Berry, yeah, I know, but for me it's flower. I'm gonna consider them
Well, it's
flowers.
okay. It's seasonally appropriate.
That's right.
It's seasonally appropriate.
Oh,
So Joe, this is Rhea Kaplan?
yeah, right, yeah.
My cousin Joe.
Cousin Joe.
Mom for over 6 years.
Yeah?
6 years she was mom.
I think I've met you.
Yeah.
You were
Oh, yeah, at the
big
house.
birthday party.
Yeah, at the big birthday
Of course, I saw you there.
You know, it was a good thing we did that 100th birthday party. Have
Oh,
something
that was such a
fun.
good party.
That was a great idea.
Such a great
I've
idea.
had people come in from all over,
That was
and now they don't have to feel, that they.
Whatever it is, any time a family gets together, especially this family, everyone's so get along so well.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Hello,
Always a pleasure.
How are you, Sam? Okay.
All right, so it'll be
Yeah, that probably counts.
quite a
God,
count.
she is something else.
They have several people. Jackie
Jackie has a whole bag.
she's got the whole bag.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'm lucky I remember to bring my shoes.
You're a vice president now. This is
Red?
vice. Maybe you were good with vice.
Alana, thanks for having the fun.
Who did they use?
Rick?
Jackie, shall we sit down or?
Excuse me. We're going right there. We're going to lift and go right onto the site there, okay? And just watch your step. We're going to go.
We're gonna hit him on the rollers. Richard. Drop it down a little bit and slide.
Taking it okay?
Whatever. We're gonna tear it in a minute. We're gonna do it since Richard.
Thank you, Paul Barrett. You can have a seat.
I almost know what I'm doing. Hold on, my brain.
It's a breakfast necessary.
What you have to do is get the coat. Oh, do you remember? Maybe so.
All but one. All but one.
These are stacked, so. Okay.
All but one.
A season is set for everything. A time for every experience under heaven. A time for planting and a time for reaping. A time for keeping and a time for discarding. A time for loving and a time for hating. A time for embracing and a time for refraining. A time for slaying and a time for healing. A time for laughing and a time for weeping. A time for dancing and a time for wailing. A time for birthing and a time for dying. A time for speaking and a time for silence. A time for seeking and a time for losing. Friends and family, we come to bring Sylvia Haynes to this place of final rest beside Danny as we reflect on an incredible life, a long life, a life that has brought future generations into this world and untold blessings. We will honor her today with words from our tradition, words from our hearts and memories. The 23rd Psalm reads, Mizmor LeDavid, Psalm of David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in straight paths for God's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Amen.
I recently read that experts can determine a person's age to within 5 years based on the examination of a single tooth. How the enamel of the tooth wears away, exposing softer layers of tissue beneath. And only 40% of people, not only, but 40% of people have no teeth at all by the time they reach the age of 85. But Sylvia, at age 102, had all of her teeth except for one. She was a dental miracle. The hard enamel of 31 of her 32 teeth was something of a metaphor for the strength and resilience of Sylvia's century plus in this world. She undoubtedly would not appreciate all the references to her exact age, and I did notice in the Washington Post that you decided to include it. It wasn't that she was ashamed or embarrassed to be a centenarian. It's that she didn't like the associations that went along with it. She didn't want to be thought of as being old. She didn't want people to pull away from her because they assumed by the numerical value of her age that she was somehow frail or decrepit. Sylvia was a social being. She loved to schmai around with her friends, all of them chronologically younger, and until recently, she was driving the tenderfoot 90-year-olds around in her car. Ever since Angela Duckworth wrote her book, there's been a lot of talk in society about grit, that idea of sustained persistence and perseverance over the long haul of life. And Sylvia embodied grit. You'd have to, when you think about it, in order to emerge from an era of the Great Depression and another pandemic. For a woman of that era to pursue a career and become self-supporting, Sylvia attended Hunter College in New York and had a long career as a public school teacher. Along the way, she was fixed up on a blind date with a nice Jewish engineer named Emmanuel, Manny. And they were married for 66 years. And for many of those years, they devoted themselves to their work and to dutifully raising their 3 boys, Charles, Lenny, and Richard, whom she was very, very proud. While Sylvia and Manny by no means lived an extravagant lifestyle, they spared no expense when it came to their kids, whether it was some spending money to go out on a date or assistance in pursuing their education. Sure, they took trips to the Catskills and eventually bought a place in Florida where Sylvia loved playing tennis just about every day, but they wouldn't be called fancy people. Of course, there was the one exception of Sylvia's hallowed weekly hair appointment that could not be canceled or rescheduled for any reason. She was always immaculate. Hair, nails, makeup, clothing. When she was teaching, someone mentioned that Mrs. Haynes was the most elegantly dressed kindergarten teacher anyone had ever seen. And when Manny balked at Sylvia having a little surgery to remove a bump on her nose, she wouldn't take no for an answer. She made her own appointment, bought a bus ticket, and went and got it done. She was feisty and looking good. Probably made her feel good too. Yesterday I saw a picture of Sylvia at her 100th birthday party. She did not miss her hair appointment that week. She was perfectly coiffed with a stylish sun visor placed just so in her hair, and she was still dressed to the nines in a teal suit, string of pearls, matching earrings. She looked gorgeous. While the fountain of youth is a mythical idea, it seems that at least one way to pursue a long life, if nothing else interferes, is to stay busy, to keep stimulating the mind and the body. And Sylvia, it sounds like, had a really severe case of Spilkes. She couldn't sit still, whether it was dancing or swimming, playing tennis or piano, painting or volunteering in Jewish women's organizations. She just never stopped stimulating her body and mind. I wonder if that helps explain how she never darkened the door of a hospital with the exception of delivering her 3 children. Jackie and Lenny were recalling how some 20 years ago they brought Sylvia and Manny and Jackie's parents to Israel together. They recalled what an amazing time they all had on that trip. And even when Jackie and Lenny went off to Petra, leaving the 4 of them in Israel, they turned into teenagers. They all had a blast, firing the guide and doing their own thing, exploring and enjoying their time together. And what could be more life-giving? What could be more satisfying, more invigorating than to be blessed not only with 2 wonderful grandchildren, but 6 beautiful great-grandchildren? The book of Proverbs says, Ateret zikenim b'nei banim. The crown that elders wear is their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That was Sylvia's tiara, sitting atop her perfectly blown-out hairdo. What a blessing. What an achievement. This coming Shabbat morning, tomorrow, we will announce in Shul the coming of a new month on the Jewish calendar, Adar Rishon. In the traditional prayer, when we announce the coming of a new month in the week ahead, we ask God, Vatiten lanu chayim arukim. God, grant us a long life. Chayim shel shalom, peaceful life. Chayim shel tova, chayim shel bracha, a life of goodness and blessing. Chayim shel parnasah, a life in which we make a respectable living. Chayim shel chilutz atzamot, a life of physical vitality. The list goes on and concludes with the words, Chayim sheyimalu mishalot libenu letova, a life in which all of our worthy aspirations will be fulfilled. I think Sylvia, in her 102, almost 103 years in this world, had all of those prayers answered. Think about it. Long life. Peaceful life. life, goodness, and blessing, respectable living, physical vitality. She had it all. And the greatest tribute to her legacy would be for you, her descendants, her loved ones and friends, to be similarly blessed. May you each know all these blessings and more as you continue to pursue Sylvia Haynes' legacy in the world, stimulating your body and mind, having a little bit of shpilchus, instead of sitting around, getting up and doing and engaging in the world around you, so that you make her memory a blessing each and every day. Amen.
Rabbi, thank you so much for your amazing words. You described my mother better than I could have. I mean, you much very articulate and captured the essence of it. And thank you so much. So I just wrote a little bit. If I had to describe my mother in a few words, I would say she was a proud woman. Not proud in a negative sense, but in a positive sense. She wanted to look good, to sound good, to act good. She was a loving mother, but was always reserved in any show of affection. This was the way she was raised, and she carried that forward into her adult life. She was happily married for over 66 years. I was alive most of those 66 years, and in all those years, I never heard a single negative word between my mother and my father, and I also never heard a single negative word that she ever said about any other family member or close or friend. She never talked bad about anyone. I never heard her say anything nasty about anyone. She was always careful to never show strong emotions or to lose control. She was an especially good grandmother. By that time in her life, she was free of the stress of money, of working, and the stress of raising 3 boys. She was very generous and very attentive to her 2 grandchildren, Eileen and Michael. I think she was able at that time in her life to be less stressed about appearances and to show more outward love. She also had more time and energy to spend with Eileen and Mike than she had to spend with her own 3 boys. I know Eileen and Mike will miss her greatly. My brother Charles is not well enough to come here to the cemetery today, but he was the firstborn child in the family and was the one and only for several years. I know he will miss our mother greatly. Hopefully he is watching this on live stream, and hopefully, I'm sure he wishes he could be here. Concluding, I will greatly miss my mom. She lived a good life, which has been and will continue to be my model and my goal as I continue through old age. She was healthy, active, and continually learning new things such as painting, playing the piano, reading, etc. Until over 100 years old. She never spent a single night in a hospital except when she gave birth, and had all her teeth except one. We should all do as well. And I'll have more to say at the Shiva Minions at our home on Saturday evening after Shabbat, and then on Sunday morning. Thank you all for coming on this cold day.
Well, thank you, Rabbi, for your comments, Lenny. When I think about Mom's life, and I think about the span of her life, I can't think of any other 102-year span where someone would have experienced the incredible changes in the world that she did. She was born in 1919. The First World War had technically still not ended. It didn't end until about 6 months later. The Wright brothers' first flight had only been 16 years prior. was born during the flu pandemic, the one that was an order of magnitude worse than the ones we have today. And she ironically died during the flu pandemic. She did not get sick from either of them. She saw things such as the Civil War veterans who were still very active when she was born, and she died in a time when NASA was launching spacecraft to find distant galaxies. It's amazing when you think of that span of a life to have experienced those things. So she had a great life in many ways, but I think what I think about her, when I think about, other than the things you've heard from my brother Lenny, of course, about how a loving mother she was and how she was proud of her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, I think about how any other person would have experienced the span of life and the things that she experienced during her life. And that does my heart good. I think if you think about what life is all about and the span of those experiences, I would challenge anyone to find someone else who lived 102 years and experienced the breadth of change in the world that she experienced. So it does my heart good to know that. So, thank you.
We're an intimate group. If anyone else wants to share a few memories just extemporaneously, please feel free.
This really is not so much about my mother-in-law Sylvia, but just I would like to acknowledge that for the last number of years of her life, she was cared for with such great care and love by Rhea Kaplan back here.
Thank you.
And we really owe her a debt of gratitude for the quality of her life in her older years.
Very good. Thank you.
I got one. All right, I'm going freestyle.
Good.
I'm going freestyle. Right. All right, so I converted to Judaism, right? You know, it's hard to come into a family not knowing anything about Judaism. And this woman taught me a lot about it. But most importantly, Eileen and I went on a tour to Florida. We went and visited all the grandparents and whoever's down there. And we stopped at the Haynes' house. And it was early in the morning, and I was up and she was up, and she goes, "Would you like a coffee?" I said, "Sure." So I got the coffee. And then she went into the bedroom. She came out and she put her tennis clothes on. And I'm still in my bedclothes. You know, I got like shorts on, and she's like, "Let's go play tennis." And I said, "Uh-oh." I mean, I'm in my early 20s. This lady wanted to play tennis. So we go out there and play tennis, and she served one up on me and went right past me. And I was like, "Man, this is a new sport. This is not like baseball." And then she serves up again. This one, I hit it. It went over the fence. And it went in the pool. And she went like this. And she watched it hit the pool, and she goes, "Oh, you're not very good at this game." She goes, "That's not good at all. You're supposed to." She taught me how to play tennis with the wrist and everything. The bottom line is, she kicked my ass. So I don't know what happens after this, but you know, if you have to recruit someone, she's a good one. She doesn't look like it, but she's small and petite, but she's a good one.
Thank you.
What a great story.
You don't want to follow that?
I went 0-1.
Lifetime achievement.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I think a lot of us have things that we'll
Say it.
say at Shiva. Shiva.
gentlemen from the cemetery come, we're going to lower the casket into the grave, and then we'll have an opportunity, each of us who are here, to perform a very special mitzvah. In the Jewish community, we bury each other, so to speak. Take this on as a sacred obligation. It's part of the greater Jewish family. So each one of us will have an opportunity to come forward and place earth on the grave. The custom is to place a minimum of 3 shovelfuls of earth, but again, we're a small group, so if you want to do some more, please. The idea is the first shovelful is turned upside down, so we don't do it in the best way possible. It expresses our reluctance at having to perform this deed. But then by turning it right side up, our acceptance that this is what we must do at this time. So there will be shovels on either side of the earth. I invite you to come up on either side and place this warm layer of earth over this grave as we bring Sylvia to this place of rest beside Manny. Tavo v'shalom, as you go to this place of final rest and peace. As we prepare to place earth on the grave, we begin by placing earth from Eretz Yisrael, from the land of Israel, connecting this grave to the very first grave the Jewish people ever consecrated, when Abraham, our patriarch, bought a plot of land in the land of Israel to bury his beloved wife Sarah. And now we take from that very land and place it on this grave, connecting Sylvia's place of rest with the continuity and history of the Jewish people since our very beginnings. Now I invite you please to come forward on either side as we place earth on the grave.
Not empty. Chronological generation. How old was your dad? He died. He was a pretty sick mess at the time. He was a healthy, strong guy, but he died. He was like 70. He just kidney problems. He thought he was going to live forever. Ray, do you want to go to the other side?
You like laughing at your dad? I get it. I like laughing at your dad too.
You did a proud letter. Now we know where you came from.
I am. I don't like sitting here.
You get that from your mother. Did your father take us all the time?
Sort of, yeah.
They call it dreaming. She puts reading.
Okay, everyone, let's come together if we can for some concluding prayers. אמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה ומעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת שרה בת מנחם מנדל ולינה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן את מנוחתה. ענה בעל הרחמים, אז תראה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה. ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Sarah Bat Menachem Mendel Valena, Sylvia Haynes, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life everlasting. May she rest in peace. Let us say Amen. Turn together to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Mourners, and certainly anyone else who might have a yahrzeit or may want to recite these words, you're welcome to join. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Kibrute V'yamlich Malchute L'chayechon U'yomechon Uvchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'gizman Kariv V'imru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'alam U'lamei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitba'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yit'aleh V'yit'ala Shemei V'kudsha B'richu Le'ela Mimkol Birchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen Yehe Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Yibru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Imromav U'Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Yibru Amen. May the source of peace in the universe cause peace to come into our hearts and into our souls and comfort those who are mourning, helping them to make Sylvia's memory a blessing, to live lives filled with her stamina, her zest for life, her spilkis, and her great strength. May this family only come together for simchas. So the custom is that the mourners depart from the grave through two parallel lines of those who are here to offer condolences, but there are a lot of family members here, so we can all kind of join arms and walk together as we say the traditional words, Hamakom yinachem etchem b'toch sha'ar avilei Tzion Yerushalayim. May God comfort you along with all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Have a Shabbat Shalom. So tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, Shiva Minyan at Jackie Lenny's home, and then Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Ametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina v'malot kedoshim utehorim kezohar harakia mazirim et nishmat Sarabat Menachem Mendel Velina Shehalecha leolama began Eden etei menufata Ana bal harachamim astireha beseter knafecha leolamim utzeror vitzeror achaim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata ותנוח בשלום על משכבה